Black Desert Online is one of those games that I've always had my eyes on but never actually tried. Like a pretty girl at a party who makes eye contact but you're too scared to approach because she's probably a sorceress main. You see, I'm a fairly big MMO fan and I've played most of the major ones released from the 2000s to 2020, but for some reason I just never got around to Black Desert. Maybe I was just saving my soul for something shinier. Spoiler alert, it's shiny but also slightly sketchy. In any case, that ended a couple of weeks ago when I finally decided to delve into this Korean action MMO in order to answer the age-old question, is it worth playing today in 2025, specifically as a newcomer? Because nothing says I have my life together like starting an MMO in 2025. And well, just like always, the answer to that question is pretty complicated, but we'll cross that bridge at the end. Before I delve into it though, I just want to remind you that I have a playlist of these smaller retrospective videos on my channel, so if you're interested in more content like this, then remember to subscribe. And a thumbs up is very much appreciated. Also, if you don't subscribe, I'll send my Guild of Invisibility Spiders after you. Many thanks. Now, Black Desert Online is a fairly unique product in the MMO market, I feel, because unlike most MMOs, it actually has a fairly advanced character creation system. I mean, you can do stuff like change the height of your body, your facial structure, neck length, shoulder size, and my personal favorite, thigh thickness. Oh my god! Truly, the sliders were forged in thirst. Joking aside, I've spent at least 4 to 5 hours just playing around with the creator, probably more, and that generally signifies that it has a good character creator since you can really get into the nitty-gritty details. That said, there is one thing I have to mention here, and this ties together with the gameplay, because here's the thing, classes are tied to sex, as in whether you play as male or female. Say, if you want to roll a male samurai, well, then you're shit out of luck because only hot women get to be samurai. And well, I'm not really complaining here, but I can see why people think of this as a limitation, because it is. On the other hand, I do understand why they've done this, as animating one single body type per class, they're essentially putting all the work in on making the animations and movements as fitting and smooth as possible. And that brings us to gameplay, which, I gotta be real with you, really impressed me from the very start. For once, it wasn't just button mashing disguised as gameplay. Now, because I've trained martial arts most of my life and because punching things is satisfying, I decided to roll a monk, aka the Mystic. And man, combat in this game is just extremely satisfying. After years of hearing how great the combat is in BDO, it didn't take more than a few seconds for me to be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Punches have weight to them, rapidly kicking monsters in the face feels crunchy as all hell, and pulling off combo after combo is so damn satisfying. It's like eating potato chips. It's irresistible, except you're slicing through goblins with your legs instead of consuming sodium. Now the cool thing is that this isn't just limited to the Mystic either. Most of the classes I've tried all feel pretty good to play. Two of my favorite ones are definitely Drakania and the Wu-Sa. Drakania is this paladin type class which uses draconic power to quite literally smite everything on the battlefield, and her slow swings both look and sound really powerful. The Wu-Sa is also incredibly fun to play, and really, she's one of the more unique classes I've seen in an MMO yet. Like, she uses a folding fan as a weapon to do stuff like control the weather and cast spells. Like, she is one anime opening away from breaking the sound barrier. And she can do stuff like teleport around the battlefield using butterflies. Like, it's some crazy cool stuff, and it's such a pleasure to watch. And I really hate using this word, but honestly, it's pure spectacle. Now, when you reach a certain level, you also unlock a new class-specific specialization that gives you new moves, abilities, and sometimes even a different way to play. Unfortunately, because I've been trying out so many of the classes, I haven't reached the point yet where I've unlocked them, but looking at the showcases for these subclasses, they obviously seem really fun as well. I also can't speak much on the talent trees and such, but from my understanding, you unlock basically all of the talents as you level up, meaning there isn't much variation in terms of builds. That said, people use abilities and skills differently, and because of the sheer amount of abilities there are, I think there's a decent amount of variety when it comes to playstyle. Variety as in I spam this skill 20 times versus I spam that skill 20 times. Now, I can't say that I feel overly generous on the RPG side of BDO because there are some things that has noticeably been missing throughout my experience. First of all, the lack of interesting loot and flat progression, and well, if I wanted flatness, I'd go to my local pancake house. Thing is, generally speaking, most MMOs have a pretty wide variety in armors and weapons you go through as you work your way to max level, either by getting quest rewards or just randomly picking up a piece of equipment that's better than what you were already wearing. Unfortunately, BDO has a distinct lack of gear overall, at least up until level 50, and somewhere above that. For example, I was running around with the same old equipment for my Drakania up until later levels, because you see BDO uses an upgrade system where you use black stones to upgrade your armor instead of switching it out. Imagine carefully polishing a 10-year-old sedan instead of getting a new car. Thrilling? Not really. Now, on paper, this is actually a pretty brilliant idea because you don't have to swap out equipment all the time if you just want to level up. It's, well, convenient. However, as this is an MMO, cool armor and weapons are usually a major draw because it allows you to express yourself throughout the game. Unfortunately, BDO just doesn't have much in terms of gear variety at all, and so I definitely felt a distinct lack of flavor as I was leveling up, because I never actually invested any time in comparing armor pieces and making sure my character looked cool. I felt like I was wearing the same pair of socks for 5 days straight. It was pretty monotonous and pretty stinky.
Uh-oh, stinky.
All I was doing was going through the story quests and laying waste to armies of monsters, which is fun in its own right, but it would have been cool to see some variation and some actual evolution to my character as I was leveling, because as it stands, at level 1 I looked like a sexy potato, and at level 50 I looked like a slightly stronger sexy potato. All that said though, there is a way to get some cool outfits, if you're ready to swipe the credit card, because nothing says roleplay like paying real money for pixels. You see, BDO has an in-game cash shop, and here's the thing, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. As long as you don't have to sell your kidney for a new hat, I'm okay-ish. What I don't like, however, is aside from the crazy pricing for one single outfit, is that most of the cool outfits are directly tied to the cash shop, meaning that most of the other armors you go through in the game are fairly standard in appearance. On the other hand, you can actually sell these outfits on the auction house to other players, which basically turns fashion into a fast-paced capitalism. Fashionalism, anyone? Meaning that you can bid on these outfits if you have the silver for it, but good luck getting these since it can take everywhere from a day to months before someone actually sells one to you.
You what?
What I'm trying to say here is that the outfits and armor and gear system feels really restrictive. Like it feels like the game shepherds you towards paying just for you to look cool, and I don't know, stuff like this doesn't leave a good feeling in my gut. That said, the game doesn't actually force you to do this. I mean, you can play the rest of the game just by paying your monthly subscription fee, but, well, I gotta be real with you, there's not much in terms of game aside from what I've already mentioned. At least, not from what I've experienced. That brings us to the story and the world of Black Desert, and well, I'm not gonna say that it's terrible, but it's not a masterpiece either. I mean, the English voice acting is overall pretty alright, and I was actually impressed that the localization is actually pretty good.
Young lady, you dare hold such a tone to speak with such derision to me! You heard that cheeky, insolent cur! I saw that smirk! You, come here this instant!
Words make sense, the plot generally follows, and I don't think I was ever confused by what was going on during the early hours of the main story. However, the in-game presentation of cutscenes and dialogue leaves much to be desired. Now yes, the game is 9 years old at this point, but like most dialogue scenes doesn't even have the NPCs move their lips when talking. Telepathy cutscenes, a true MMO innovation. Jokes aside, most of them are very static and it just collides with the quality of the voiceovers themselves, and this doesn't seem to be due to an issue of engine limitations. Honestly, it just comes off as lazy. Lazy like, my coffee is cold but I'm not fixing it kind of lazy. At other times though, animations can be overly expressive, like this band of troubadours playing in a tavern, and I don't know, it just looks really silly. Alright, so what about the main story then? Well, it's actually not terrible. There are actually some fairly fun and interesting characters, at least when you reach a certain point when you're dealing with political turmoil. For example, there's this noblewoman by the name of Jarette, whom you assist in solving an ongoing crisis, and there's this whole drama between her and her two old childhood friends, and there's this whole scenario where one of them becomes evil and you have to help take him down. And again, because of the fairly good localization and mostly okay voiceover, the main story actually managed to pull me in a little. However, after that whole scenario was dealt with, I have to say that I found it hard to care much about the main story as I kept leveling, because once the petty nobles leave, so does my attention span. Actually, I found myself skipping through most of the dialogue after that point, and I don't think it's necessarily due to the writing dropping in quality, but mainly because a lot of the dialogue can really drag on, like for way too long. A lot of the time you're just seeing characters taking turns talking telepathically, and talking, and talking, and talking, and just when you think the dialogue scene is over, they keep going, and well, it just never stops. It's like they invented the NPC dialogue marathon, and well, I didn't train for this race. Like, the pacing with the dialogue is just overall pretty bad, and I think that if they just had found a way to deliver dialogue in shorter, more impactful bursts, people probably wouldn't skip over it so much. But who knows, maybe they have learned from this, at least I hope they have, or maybe I'm the only one who has a problem with this, but somehow I doubt that's the case. So, at the end of the day, Black Desert Online is actually more entertaining than I thought it would be, and the general combat loop has genuinely surprised me in a really good way. However, the fact that most outfits and personalization are tied to the cash shop, the story and the dialogue pacing being relatively underwhelming, animations being substandard in quality, especially when you compare it to games like The Old Republic, which, mind you, came out before BDO, it all results in an experience that has been very mixed as a new player. It's like getting a really good burger, but they forgot the bun and slapped on a $15 upcharge for cheese. BDO does some things extremely well, and others it just straight up underdelivers on. But I still feel like it warrants at least a couple of sessions, because the combat in of itself is just so heckin' good that I'd hate for you guys to miss out on it, because few things in life beat the feeling of sending a monster into orbit with a spinning kick. Luckily for you and me, BDO offers a free week's trial, so hey, I can absolutely recommend trying it out, simply for the combat and the starting hours, and who knows, maybe you won't find my problems with BDO as problematic for you. Or, worst case scenario, you spend 168 hours grinding and still ask, why did I do this? But that's gonna be it for today, guys. I'm off to go stare longingly at outfits I'll never get to use. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Mr. Olten, signing off.